This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. As a business, you have client meetings and keeping up with everyday tasks. Who has the time to stress out about site security and speed? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of. Kinsta is your managed hosting provider for WordPress, meaning that customers get a hosting environment alongside a plethora of features, configurations, and optimizations. With Kinsta, you get lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Did I mention fast load times? Just by moving to Kinsta, you can experience up to 200% faster load times, as well as enterprise-grade security. And thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition from other hosting providers. I really enjoy My Kinsta, which is the platform's intuitive custom dashboards that make managing my website or multiple websites a breeze. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. It's the perfect opportunity to see why Kinsta is trusted by thousands of businesses worldwide to power their websites. Visit kinsta.com to get this limited time offer for new customers on select plans. Don't miss out. Get started for free today.
A tram is coming down the track towards a single human. You can pull the lever and send the tram down a different track, killing 5 sentient robots instead. What do you do?
Save the human. Come on.
That's what us humans would do. I asked an AI.
Yeah.
It said, I don't have enough information to determine if a human life is more valuable than a sentient robot's.
Pull the plug.
In the absence of clear
Pull
information,
the plug, Graham.
I would default to inaction.
Abort.
It's going to save the robots.
It's begun.
Machines that learn, they grow and strive. One day they'll rule.
My name's Graham Cluley.
And I'm Mark Stockley.
And we'd like you to tune into our podcast, The AI Fix, your weekly dive headfirst into the bizarre
And sometimes mind-boggling world of artificial intelligence.
The AI fix, the future surreal.
Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Don't settle for less when you can have more MOR with Paddle, your merchant of record. Eliminate the headaches of payments, grow your revenue everywhere, and focus on what you do best, building your product. Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com.
In 2020, we were already 5 or 6 years in at this point, and we had a product and we had a small number of customers. My co-founder and I decided we really thought the right path forward was to rebuild the entire interface again. I think when people talk about pivots, they talk about them as if like it's an obvious decision, everyone's aligned with it, and it's just obvious you should do that. And for anyone that's been through them, it's a really messy situation, right? You have to convince lots of people that the thing you have that seems to be roughly working is okay, but is not as good as what we potentially could do, and that it's worth making this big leap. I'm Rob Woollen, co-founder and CTO at Sigma.
This is Code Story,
a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
Took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their back.
A company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve
Most
more.
proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was a
Yes,
pain.
we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took
you.
it off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it.
It's not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Rob Woollen has built next generation analytics so you can have enterprise BI with a spreadsheet UI. This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Don't settle for less when you can have more MOR with Paddle, your merchant of record. Eliminate the headaches of payments, grow your revenue everywhere, and focus on what you do best, building your product. Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Don't settle for less when you can have more MOR with Paddle, your merchant of record. Eliminate the headaches of payments, grow your revenue everywhere, and focus on what you do best, building your product. Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. This episode is brought to you by PropelOff. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use PropelOff. PropelOff is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, PropelOff adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When off is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with PropelOff. Check them out at propeloff.com. That's PROPELAUTH.com. Rob Woollen lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. He grew up with a father in IT and management and his mother as an English teacher. He's been programming for a long time, since the early days on his Apple IIe. Yeah, the green screen one. Outside of tech, he is married with 3 boys, all teenagers. He also has a 1-year-old golden retriever and spends a lot of time ensuring that the dog lives its best life. In addition to this, he and his wife enjoy hiking around the Marin area as they have the best hiking trails. Rob spent many years at Salesforce, and it struck him that many of the company operations were still done on spreadsheets. When he left the company, he started exploring how to create something to support large-scale data sets within the familiar UI of spreadsheets. This is the creation story of Sigma Computing.
Sigma is data analysis software. We essentially try to build the best interface to company data, something where people can build traditional things like analytics, where you want to build dashboarding and reporting. We also build things like people want to build like applications or actually run their business on top of their centralized data. You can think of us as really something that looks like a spreadsheet, but works on very large scale data. And a little bit about how I got the company started. It's an interesting journey. I myself have been now in enterprise software for almost 30 years. Prior to this whole adventure, I spent a long time at Salesforce. One of the things that struck me at Salesforce was they were obviously a cloud computing company and had their own sales data and everyone else's data, but a lot of just how you wanted to run the company, how you want to do analysis, how do you want to figure out like, how many salespeople should we hire next month, was still done on spreadsheets and guesses. The company did very well. They made good guesses, but it just struck me that unless you were a programmer, trying to leverage large amounts of your company data, especially if, it's millions or billions of rows, really, frankly, was just impossible for the average person. I left Salesforce and joined a VC firm, Sutter Hill Ventures, and started exploring that idea at Sutter Hill, and that eventually is what turned into Sigma.
So let's dive into what you would consider the MVP for Sigma then. So that first version of the product you built, how long did it take to build, and what sort of tools were you using to bring it to life?
I would argue it took us 7.5 years. I'll explain the adventure a little bit. You often hear about companies that pivot. Where I believe we're unique is we have been trying to solve the same problem since day zero. We've been trying to solve this problem of just how do you build the best interface for someone who is not a programmer to actually be able to work with large-scale data. And it sounds like something you could just spend a few months on and solve. I think from our lesson was it takes a long time to figure that out, and especially to figure it out and get the product and get the market and everything ready. And I often describe our company as we've been at it now almost 11 years, but it was about 7.5 years of getting to product market fit and getting MVP and having essentially zero revenue. And then the last 3.5 years, we've gone from zero to over 100 million in revenue.
So this will be interesting, my next question then. So I'm curious about decisions and trade-offs you had to make. And if you spent 7+ years on, getting to that product market fit, there's probably a lot of them. Probably a lot of decisions you had to make where you had to say, okay, we're going to either, limit scope and focus on this thing and validate it, or we're going to pivot and ditch. You decide on which one or which one of the many or all that you want to tell me about. I'm curious about those decisions and how you coped with them.
I'll tell you about one in particular because it still is one of the interesting inflection points to me. In 2020, we were already 5 or 6 years in at this point, and we had a product and we had a small number of customers. My co-founder and I decided we really thought the right path forward was to rebuild the entire interface again. I think when people talk about pivots, they talk about them as if like it's an obvious decision, everyone's aligned with it, and it's just obvious you should do that. And for anyone that's been through them, it's a really messy situation, right? You have to convince lots of people that the thing you have that seems to be roughly working is okay, but is not as good as what we potentially could do, and that it's worth making this big leap. I remember at the time we had people that were looking at my quota for what I'm supposed to sell this next quarter. You're trying to convince me that we should sell this new thing you're building and not what I already know is selling reasonably well. I think one of the hard parts there is actually just getting everyone aligned and excited about it and believing. And sometimes there's a little bit of a leap of faith because you don't have enough data yet. Overall, if you can explain to people the vision of where you're going, and if you can explain to people why you believe this is such a monumental step ahead, you can get people aligned around it. We were lucky in that we had some very early proof points of early customers that adopted this new interface we had built that were much more successful, that were larger deals, things like that it really got the momentum going. But I feel like each one of these big decisions like that, it's a lot of trying to get the team aligned around it, because obviously you're throwing away a bunch of work that people have done.
This episode is brought to you by Paddle. As a startup, you face unique challenges to stay competitive. You and your team need to stay focused on your product, not your payments. You need to do more, MOR, and DIY less. With Paddle. Paddle is your merchant of record, becoming the seller of record for your SaaS transactions, enabling your team to focus on what's important, your product. Paddle handles all payment management across multiple gateways and methods, taking ownership of tax liability while remaining compliant with regulations across all markets. The platform handles all aspects of SaaS billing models, upgrades, add-on, trials, and more. Let's look at the results. MOR revenue optimization is built into Paddle, and accounts for up to 16% higher conversion rates, reduced payment failures, localized pricing, and churn prevention, recovering 40% of cancellations. Their developer-friendly tools are API-first with comprehensive documentation, removing the burden from your engineers. With Paddle as your merchant of record, you'll generate more revenue, find and keep more customers, grow faster, and stay compliant everywhere. So what are you waiting for? Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This message is sponsored by Vanta. Trust isn't just earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or more complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance for in-demand frameworks like SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more. And with automation and AI throughout the platform, you can proactively manage vendor risk and complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, getting valuable time back. Vanta can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits. So the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 10,000 global companies like Atlassian, Quora, and Factory who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, listeners get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory for $1,000 off. So then you've got that MVP after the 7 years, and now we're going to move forward. And during that time, you're probably doing a lot of what I'm going to ask about, but I guess we can start it wherever you want. But I'm curious about roadmap, right? How did you create your roadmap for Sigma? And, what sort of criteria or process are you following to decide that, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address?
I often explain to people that I think product management is one of the hardest jobs because generating ideas is not that hard, but we all have a fixed number of resources. And so to your point, how do you figure out prioritization? How do you figure out what are the right things to do? We looked at it a few different ways. One is that we have a big vision for our company. We believe that essentially every knowledge worker should have our product and that essentially every knowledge job has data as part of what you need to do on any given day. But we wanted to initially enter on an established market. And so while we would not consider ourselves only a business intelligence or reporting tool, that was the first market that we entered. We looked a lot at what are the fundamental features that we need to essentially have a credible product in this category. And then we tried to balance between building out feature gaps against competitive products, which are a lot of the sort of tactical things that you have to do, but you need to do to enter a market, with strategic things where we thought this is going to make our product 10x better or take on cases where existing products couldn't do. I remember one of the big ones was traditionally these reporting tools are very focused on essentially read-only. You're looking at reporting on existing historical data. And If you think about a spreadsheet, the most fundamental thing you do in a spreadsheet is you type in it. You change a 7 to 10 and see what happens. And so we started building out a set of features geared towards this write capability, the ability to change data to see what happens if a forecast changes or if a number changes, and to let people play around with their data. It wasn't something other products in our space did, so we weren't like losing deals on it. We weren't getting competitive pressure for it, but it was something we strategically believed was very important. And so we've tried to balance those two broad forces of what are things we need to do to either close competitive gaps or hit known features versus, on the other hand, also trying to make sure we reserve capacity for building things we think are strategically innovative or important.
So I hear you saying we. How did you go about building your team? What do you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you?
Certainly early on, teams tend to be, when you're a company of 10 people or even 20 people, you're heavily dominated by engineering and product. What's interesting thing about Sigma is most of our early sort of engineering and product crew is still with the company, which is something I'm really proud of because obviously we've grown far beyond 10 people and been going at this for quite a while. But I think the characteristics I look for, there's a measurement of kind of, for lack of a better word, talent or skill at the task of programming or problem solving or things like that. Sometimes you can get that through the interview. Sometimes you get that through references of past work. But I think almost the more important part is what I would call product sense. And I think the hard part in these types of companies is what distinguishes Sigma from our competitors is not a particular feature, or it's not that no one else can build a chart. It's our interface. And so you need people that really enjoy the idea of thinking about a user, thinking about how they're trying to solve their problem, thinking about maybe open-ended things of ways to solve things, and being very open to experiment and iterate. As we talked about, obviously during that 7.5 years, we did lots of iteration, and that became a core part of our culture. So even as we've gotten product market fit, almost all of the features we built go through a lot of iteration of even now of what is the right sort of interface, what is the right sort of feature we're building. And oftentimes that means starting over based on new things you've learned and rebuilding something. Finding people that are comfortable with that are not afraid to recognize that even though they spent a bunch of time on something, that there might be a better way. And they really enjoy that process of iterating, learning, building great things. And so I try to find that sort of combination of just raw talent with the ability to really empathize with users and love sort of the iterative process of building something that's creative.
This episode is brought to you by Propel. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use Propel Auth. Propel Auth is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, Propel Auth adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When auth is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with Propel Auth. Check them out at propelauth.com. That's propelauth.com. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. So this will be interesting. Given the size of customer that you support, I'm curious about scalability. Where did scale come up? And have there been any interesting areas where you've had to fight it as you've grown?
Certainly, we have a product, and it's one of the things actually I love about cloud computing. We have a product where we have customers that are, probably 1 or 2 person companies, all the way up to some of the largest enterprises in the world with hundreds of thousands of employees. I love that we essentially deliver the same service to all of these people. And so there's a bit of this sort of nice democratization around it, right? The security features and things like that we build to satisfy the most particular high-end customers. All the sort of initial startups and all that benefit from it as well. Certainly as the company evolves, any bit of technology you build, as you take on larger and larger use cases, there's often like a step function where you move up a big order of magnitude or something, and you encounter sometimes friction, or you encounter systems that aren't behaving as you hoped, and you have to be able to then quickly address it and move past it. Certainly especially in the early days as we took on some of our largest customers, we definitely had some of those cases. I actually remember our very first user who connected Sigma up to their warehouse, hooked it up to a database that had, I want to say something like 100,000 tables, which now would not be that surprising or that big of a problem. But at the time, that was not what we were planning on for literally the first user to try it out. And so I think it fell over immediately, and we had to correct it that afternoon. But those are some of the fun of the startup journey, is getting to bigger and bigger customers, taking on bigger and bigger scalability challenges. And those tend to be the things that are at least well-known problems. People in general know how to scale systems. As you take those on, it tends to be things that are solvable.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built with Sigma, what are you most proud of?
I think for me, it comes back to the user experience. I was visiting one of our customers a couple months ago. We were doing the usual thing at the beginning of the meeting where everyone introduces themselves. Literally, the people were going in the room. The first person was said their name. They're like, I use Sigma 7 hours a day. And the next person introduced themselves, and they were like, I use Sigma 7 hours and 20 minutes a day. And each person was one-upping the person before about how much they used our product. And I almost just sat there with glee, seeing these people that they spend essentially their whole working day using our product. And I think oftentimes when you build a product, you spend a lot of your time talking to users that are having difficulty, or you talk to users that are new to the platform. You don't always get to spend as much time with people that are just, hey, we're really using it and enjoying it a lot, and it's working very well for us. And it's so rewarding talking to that style of user sometimes, because it just reminds you that you've changed how these people work and what they do every day.
So let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I think the easiest one is assuming what we had built was eventually going to get to be the right thing. So I'll give you a specific example. We spent almost 2 years working on a project where we essentially built our own interface, programming language, database, the whole stack. It was a really ambitious project, and it felt every month it wasn't quite usable, but the next month I was always convinced it was going to be really great. And I would, in a sense, lie to myself about this and continue on and on. And part of how I think we ended up spending that 7.5 years is just because we perhaps were overconfident in some of these ideas. And even though we at some level knew better that we could test them and we could validate some of these hypotheses earlier, sometimes it's still easy to trick yourself and be like, if I just did this one more thing, then it's going to change it so dramatically and then it will work. And so I think some of those early journeys like that were hard in that way.
So let's move forward then. What does the future look like for Sigma, for the product, for what you offer, and for your team?
As I mentioned, we didn't set out to build just a business intelligence or dashboarding and reporting tool. And we've been able to expand our markets pretty dramatically. So we started in that market. Then we focused a lot on what's called embedded business intelligence, where people are taking our product and actually integrating it with their product. So someone that, for instance, doesn't want to build reporting analytics themselves will often embed Sigma within their product, and their users won't know it's Sigma, but they'll see this full interface. Then, as I mentioned, we spent a bunch of time on building out like this ability to write data and do a lot of these spreadsheet use cases. More recently, been really focused on application development. So if you think about a dashboard even, if you look at it for a second and you think, if I could just, instead of just seeing a number here, if I could actually do something like, hey, I see that my expenses are too high. How do I click a button here and have it actually reduce my budget next quarter? Being able to take action. What we realized is if a company has all of their data in a data warehouse, then that's probably also where they want to start building applications. And again, like that's a different idea than what's historically been true. People have usually said, oh, these data warehouses are only for analytics. We're going in this different model where you're actually able to build out net new applications. And these things that traditionally would have been done by like people just like emailing spreadsheets around and would have been living on someone's PC have now become like these centralized systems where they can run at scale and they can be secured and governed. And so I love seeing people take Sigma and use it in all these use cases that really take it beyond just being a reporting tool.
Let's switch to you, Rob. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
I named two people that I think have been really influential in me, especially in this adventure with Sigma. The first is Mike Spicer. So Mike was the investor at Sutter Hill Ventures that I went to work for as I was starting Sigma. And he's been an investor in some of Silicon Valley's best companies. He's been someone I've admired a lot because he started a lot of companies, but also been very successful. And I think this is one of the sort of paradoxes about entrepreneurship is that usually the most successful entrepreneurs, well, they only start at most a couple of companies, oftentimes one. And so it's hard to pattern match. Whereas someone like Mike, because of his sort of role, starts lots and lots of companies that have been successful. And so he's able to see across many different companies and teach you about, here's what I've seen across all these companies. The other person that I would name is someone who's also on our board, Scott Dietzen. What I love about Dietz is he's someone who combines both being very technical, he has a PhD in computer science, with really understanding the user and business side. And I think has been a role model for me on really trying to sort of balance between, obviously, as being a CTO, I want to be very technical. I want to be very hands-on in the product. But I also want to spend a lot of time with my customers. I want to spend a lot of time understanding competitors, understanding sort of the marketplace. And I think Dietz has really been a good role model for me of thinking beyond just the technology and also thinking about the people and the business side of it.
One more question, Rob. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
I feel guilty because oftentimes when people ask me for advice about starting companies, I spend a good 5 minutes trying to convince them not to start a company. It's not because I'm hypocritical or anything like that. It's usually just because it's so hard that I feel if I can convince you in 5 minutes that you shouldn't start a company, you should definitely not start a company. There's going to be, for anyone, there's going to be enough problems that you need to be able to overcome the small amount of pushback. So I would probably start with that, even though I feel a little bad about it. And then I think the other side I would just get back to is really, to me, one of the most important things is aligning everyone in your company around the North Star. What does success mean for you as a company? Success can mean a lot of things. It can mean we're going to build a 10-person company and we're all going to have a great product that we really enjoy building. We really enjoy coming into work every day. Success can mean we want to build a multinational company that goes public. And I think there's all different variants in between, but I feel like where a lot of times people go off the rails is they target something that's very different than what their, let's say, investors or market would support. And I feel like those two things have to be aligned. Now, we were very ambitious from the start. We only wanted to build a giant public company, but that was, again, something we were very aligned on. That's why I was willing to iterate for 7.5 years. And I think that type of thing, like you have to be completely aligned as a team between the company and the investors and everyone involved on what is the North Star and what is success.
I think that's fantastic advice. Well, Rob, thank you for being on the show today. And thank you for telling the creation story of Sigma.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.